Welcome to The Hill's Coronavirus Report. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Each day we are interviewing consequential leaders and innovators in the battle against the coronavirus. The governor of New Jersey, Democrat Phil Murphy, just mandated masks be worn outside when social distancing is difficult. This, as New Jersey is reporting nearly 15,500 deaths and has now reported more than 174,000 verified cases of COVID-19. For some context, it's been 4 months since the state announced its first case of coronavirus. Like New York, New Jersey was one of the hardest hit virus battlegrounds. In addition to the public health challenge, the economic impact has been devastating for many. Lost revenue, lost jobs, shuttered businesses in many places around the country. So in an effort to help in a time of extreme stress, that state's former governor and his wife recently launched a nonprofit short-term revolving loan program for small businesses in hopes of providing them some relief. And recently he talked about President Trump's prospects for 2020. In a frank assessment of how the president might fare in his upcoming re-election bid, he said of the president, quote, "If he doesn't change course, both in terms of the substance of what he's discussing and the way that he approaches the American people, then he's going to lose." My next guest lays it out there. And he's someone who cares deeply about competence in government, and he worked hard early in Donald Trump's course to the White House. Unfortunately, his efforts were unplugged, and I think we have all paid a huge price for that. Just my little editorial comment. Joining me now to talk about where we are in the battle against COVID-19 and what more a government in crisis should be doing is former New Jersey Governor Christie, the 58th governor of New Jersey. Governor, thanks for joining us today. It caught my eye that you and your wife set up this revolving fund for small businesses in the communities you work in. I just sort of felt in this time where everyone from Tom Hanks is saying everyone do their part, I sort of felt like this was you doing your part in a way to help plug the gap. So tell us about that nonprofit and what you both have set up.
Thank you, Steve. And listen, Mary Pat and I were very frustrated watching what's happening, especially to really small businesses here in New Jersey, because we have been one of the most locked down states in the country. So we started something called the NJ 30-Day Fund, and it was built off an idea that Virginia had come up with. A group of folks in Virginia started something called the Virginia 30-Day Fund. And here's what it is. Companies between the size of 3 employees and 30 employees, so very small, we give them a $3,000 forgivable loan. And if they get back on their feet and they can pay it back, we will pay it forward to the next business that needs help. And so we started the fund with a $100,000 contribution from ourselves personally. And we've been raising money out there to do it. And we're really happy to say that, we've now helped over 100 businesses have gotten these loans already. The money is in their hands. We turn these applications around in 3 days. You get an answer. And we just want to try to help people in this time that's really hard. And to let you know, we've been open now for about 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, we've gotten over 3,000 applications. So it's a real problem here in New Jersey, and hopefully this will help.
Well, I mean, I think that's really interesting because when we've had a lot of conversation about the PPP program, about small business loans and trying to, keep employees done, and there's been, drama about, who got it, did Shake Shack get it and give it back or whatever. But there's another layer of companies. Many of these are new companies. Many of them are just small companies that have kind of, in my view, kind of fallen through the cracks. And so I was moved by that. Tell us about some of the stories, if you can, if it doesn't violate privacy.
No, in fact, we put all these folks up on our website, and they do video testimonials to us. So if you go to nj30dayfund.com, you can see who we've been giving the money to and what they're using it for. But I mean, Steve, we're talking about everything from, restaurants to small family marketing companies to obviously salons to, people who are in the baked goods business, people who are in the other service type businesses. I mean, it's been everything that you could possibly imagine. We've seen those type of businesses come across our transom here. And it's heartbreaking. With each application, we give them a 1-page application to fill out, and they need to attach a video showing us their business because we want to see what are we investing in. And it's been extraordinary to see people. We have one place down in South Jersey called the Red Quilt Company Store, and they make quilts, and they help to teach people how to do quilting. They've been there for over 25 years, and they're ready to go out of business. So it's been extraordinarily uplifting for us to be able to help these folks, but also let us know just how desperate this problem really is. And it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Well, look, you and I have some history where we've talked about big ideas, big issues, big politics. And I have to tell you, it caught my eye that the great Christie and Mary Pat had done something, at this level for small people. So yes, count me as enthusiastic for that. But let's move on, to other things. During my time of social distancing, I've been catching up with my reading, and I'm way behind other people. But one of the books I read was Michael Lewis's The Fifth Risk. And for those who have not been part of that, really the fifth risk, and it was about transitions in government and looking at that, was around the question of competence and running projects. And that may sound wonky and bland, but when you and I have discussed about what executive leadership means when you're running big systems, and this is not a political comment, but how important it is to have people of competence. Even you can have political appointees, but people of competence. And that's what you tried to bring to the Trump administration. Your efforts were unplugged. But now as we look at this moment, from everything from Lysol Day to issues about how intelligence is handled, I'd just love to get your thoughts as we sit in the middle of a pandemic about, one, your thoughts about running what we've been doing in response, and two, what are your insights in how we can move from where we are today to something that's working better than what we're seeing?
Well, a few things. First, going back to the transition, for those who are watching who don't know, I was asked in April of 2016 to run Donald Trump's transition. And I did that along with a group of 120 other people over the course of April to November of 2016. And thereafter, as I chronicled in my book and had been written in Michael Lewis's book and a number of others, I was fired. The political leadership of the president's campaign, namely Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner, took all the work that we did over that 6-month period and literally threw it in the dumpsters and started over with 70 days to go before they were taking over the administration. There's no question. Mick Mulvaney just said this recently, that he thinks the president's biggest weakness was his selection of personnel. That all goes back to throwing all that material out the door. So for instance, at HHS, our number one recommendation for HHS was Alex Azar. Instead, Congressman Tom Price was selected. And I think that put HHS well behind the 8 ball. The president ultimately got back to Alex Azar, and I think HHS has been run really well since then. And thank goodness we have Alex Azar in that spot during this pandemic, because he's brought real professionalism to that position. But it's incredibly important. And when you look at the pandemic and managing it, one of the things that really good, smart, experienced personnel can bring you is they can do what I used to say in the governor's office was seeing around corners. Everybody can see what's in front of them. It's anticipating based on experience, seeing around the corner. And I think what happened here to the administration early on was they didn't see around the corner of the pandemic. And so it kind of jumped on. By the time they started to pay real close attention to it in middle of March, it was already running out of control. And so I think that was an early mistake that's based, not just upon whatever decisions the president was making, but upon all the other people around him in the White House and in other executive positions. So it's incredibly important. As we move forward now, I think a lot of things have been done well. The ventilator situation, you don't hear any concerns about ventilators anymore. The president invoked the Defense Production Act. He got Ford and GM and other major companies to step in and help with the manufacturing. And you don't hear anybody complaining that they won't have enough ventilators. And those ventilators are being made now. I think they've done good progress on PPE as well. You don't hear about that anymore. Again, invoking help from the outside to be able to manufacture that PPE right here in America so that we can get it to those first-line responders that really need help, need to be protected from the virus themselves while they're treating those who are suffering from it. I think that we could have been more aggressive in the beginning, with the federal government playing a more aggressive role in telling the states what to do, but you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. So we now have to rely upon the nation's governors to be able to do the job in a cohesive, smart way. I think Larry Hogan and Andrew Cuomo have provided great leadership at the National Governors Association as chairman and vice chairman. And I think they're trying as best they can. But remember, every governor is elected on their own, and they have their own point of view. And so it just makes it a little more disjointed. But those are decisions that were made early on, and I think there's no way you can change those at this point.
You ran a state, and you ran for president of the United States on the Republican side of this, and I'm interested right now in what someone of your background looks at something like the school issue. So this week I interviewed Dr. Robert Redfield of the Centers for Disease Control about CDC guidance. Now he says he's not walking back guidance, so there's a little debate about that on what can be done with schools. But the issue about public schools and bringing kids back, particularly in states with resurgent COVID infections, and how to approach that with PPE and schools that are resource strapped. They're not even businesses that have the small loans coming into them, but the president's saying, hey, it's too expensive and we need to still do this. What's the right way, Governor, of managing these equities and assuring the safety of children and their families and getting this right? I mean, it seems like in a crisis you can call on folks for a lot of money to do what you need to do, but what is the problem here?
Well, listen, I think that, more times than not, when you're a governor, you need to rely upon the experts to give you good advice. And in this instance, I look at what the American Academy of Pediatrics has said. Now, no one's ever accused them of having a political bent one way or the other. And the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying we need to have schools open, that it's more harmful to keep children at home now than the risk is to them from contracting the virus. So I think we should err on the side of opening. But if we're going to do that, there has to be a COVID-4 package, and has to be done before they go on recess in August. And there has to be aid to states and localities to help them deal with the lost tax revenue that's happened, and to deal with the added expenses at the school level of having to deal with social distancing and other protections that need to be there. I think, quite frankly, Steve, less for the children than for the teachers. Because the teachers can tend to be older, can tend to have more of the comorbidities than the children will have. And children could get the virus and pass it to their teachers, which I think is a much greater risk than the actual risk we've seen to young people from this particular disease. So I'm more concerned about the teachers and the administrators than I am at this moment about the children, just because of what we've seen so far in the disease. So I think what the federal government should do, and the state and locals, they should follow the advice of the American Academy of Pediatrics. I think they know what's best for children, those physicians that care for them every day. But I also think you have to provide, only the federal government can provide states and localities with the resources they need under a crisis like this one. And so I think it's that combination of those two are what we should be doing as a government and as a people.
Let me ask you, Governor, in the last couple of minutes we have a kind of 30,000-foot question. Right now in the nation, we have people that, some burning masks, some vigilant about masks. We have two countries kind of cohabiting the same space, but not feeling gravity working the same way. How do we reestablish trust so that people may have their differences, but they're still pulling together as a nation? How do you get back and begin sending those signals that we're all in the same boat? I know you've thought a lot about this.
Well, we're in the midst of three crises right now, right, Steve? We have the pandemic. We have the economic crisis that was created by the pandemic, and we have a racial crisis, which was created by police brutality and a history of that in our country and in certain places, and also exacerbated by the other two issues, because people are very much on edge now, very much feel threatened because of those other two crises. So I think what we need to do is to provide substantive relief on those three issues, give answers. I think we have to reform the way we do policing in this country. I did it as governor in the city of Camden, which at the time in 2013 was rated the most dangerous city in America. 96% minority, Steve, and a $13,000 average per capita income. What did we do? We brought in an entirely new police department, 400 police officers for the same price that we had the failed 250-member police officer group. And the two most important things we did, we taught community policing, which was get them out of the cars, get them on bicycles and on foot so they get to know the community. They're not just a group of people with a gun sitting behind a smoked window in a car, but they are people who are part of their neighborhoods, who are partners with the citizens to try to make sure that the place stays safe. Second, we required the teaching, the regular teaching of de-escalation techniques. Our watchword on that was first do no harm, and that violence from police officers is an absolute last resort. What's happened in the 7 years since we did that in Camden? The murder rate is down 81%. So the city is safer. Two, the complaints by citizens of excessive use of force by police officers is down 95%. So if it can be done in the city of Camden, it can be done all over the country. And I think the way to lessen these racial tensions is by going at the substance of the problem. And we need to teach police to police differently. And if we do that, all police officers will benefit from that, and the public will benefit from it. And I think what people are starving for right now is less rhetoric, less red meat from both sides, and more substance. And we haven't had that, especially on the policing issue. And we need more of that on that, and we need more of it on the pandemic as well.
Last quick question. You're remarkably young compared to those running for president coming up. Any interest in reapplying for the job down the road?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Steve, I'm 57 years old. I've had a great career as a U.S. attorney for 7 years and 8 years as the 55th governor of New Jersey, and a job that I absolutely loved, but I was term limited after 2 terms, so I couldn't seek re-election. I'm in the private sector now and enjoying that. But once you've been a governor, I think you always feel like if you've got something to contribute. And so, yeah, I would certainly, to look at the race in 2024, and I would not back off from that at all. I feel like there are a lot of atmospheric things that happened in the lead up to the 16 race, especially the Bridgegate matter, which now has been dismissed by the United States Supreme Court in a 9-0 vote, that there was no crime committed there. And yet the media and others convicted people before they even had a trial, and it materially affected my ability to run for president. Now that we've had that cleared away and it's no longer a controversy, from my perspective, maybe 2024 is a time to try to go after that job again. I think I have a lot to contribute, and I think everybody sees that. It's very, very important to have competent executive leadership, as you said in the beginning, at all levels of government, and the kind of people that we can pick at the executive level of the federal government has a real impact on people's day-to-day lives.
Well, let me just ask you now to talk to your communications director and get me an early approval on an interview early on in that process. Is that a deal?
You got it, Steve. That's a deal.
That's a deal. Well, thank you to Mary and Pat for what you are doing for small businesses in this stressed out time. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time, Governor. Very much appreciate it.
Happy to do it, Steve. And everybody should go to nj30dayfund.com. They can see the people that are being helped by this, and it'll warm their hearts in some very difficult times.
Great. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I'm Steve Clemons. We'll see you tomorrow. Be well.